There were some that questioned if we would even have a show tonight, to which I responded, are there games that count this weekend? Yeah. So the answer is of course. Of course we're going to have a live show. It was a busy day. I had to do a couple of shows earlier. I was just on a show with our good friend Connor Newt, friend of the program, but that doesn't stop the business that we have to attend to on the air raid. Because again, we've been hammering a lot of these legal issues that have been going on in the sport for it seems like an eternity, but it's only been about a month and a half. And we are going to talk about that because I saw what Lane Kiffin had to say on the Pat McAfee show. And I do know that the SEC just released a statement saying that they were going to ban professionals from going to the conference, which good on them. The Big Ten released a statement. Notre Dame released a statement. I'll get to all of that. Don't worry. We're going to give a full week zero preview. Now, it may be a little light because we do have another show on Thursday. And if I'm just being 100% honest with you, because it was such a busy day and we had a show last night, I didn't have as much time to prepare, do a deep dive into week zero like I was hoping to do. But we do have another show on Thursday, so we can kind of fill in the gaps then. But still, we're going to talk about week zero. Vanderbilt named a starter at quarterback today, which most of the country was not expecting. I have some fall camp intel and some updates with the Arion Carter situation at the University of Tennessee. Numbers have been great the first month and a half of the show in terms of our channel analytics, live viewership, people that have gone back and watched, people that have viewed the content that has been put out. Really appreciate that. I also really appreciate everybody that's subscribed. And if you are new around here, first of all, welcome. Please make sure that you are subscribed. It doesn't sign you up for anything. It doesn't put you on a wait list. It doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps us and it's free to do. And you may not watch every minute of this show, but really subscribing to the channel helps. And it's just college football. That's all we're doing. We're talking college football year round. It's the number two sport in America behind the NFL. No, the NFL is king, but to me, college football is number one. And we're just talking college football. So make sure that you're subscribed. If you could, tell 5,000 of your closest friends about us. Make sure that they're subscribed. And if you're not sure if you're subscribed, just go ahead and double check. Again, that really helps us. A lot to talk about. And I did want to lead the show off with a sad thing. Earlier today, Tennessee legend, arguably the greatest Tennessean of all time, Dolly Parton, passed away at the age of 80. And few celebrity deaths have really rocked me to my core like this. I can't really remember the last time a celebrity death or an athlete death affected me the way that this one does. Now, I do remember Kobe Bryant passing away. I can't remember the exact year, but I remember where I was when I first saw the news. That shook me. And today I was shaken again when I found out about the passing of Dolly Parton. I'll start off by saying this. Dolly Parton was one of one. She was a legend that will never be replicated again. Anywhere from her musical impact to businesses she had as an entrepreneur, what she was able to do for those less fortunate, really what she was able to do for people in general. You can't find many people that have a bad thing to say about Dolly Parton. She was one of the few people that I've never met Dolly Parton, but she was one of the few people that was universally liked. I haven't met a single person that has a bad thing to say about Dolly Parton. And I talked about this earlier on a show I was on. Her background, and she's been very open about her background. Grew up poor in East Tennessee in Sevierville, moved to Nashville like a lot of country artists do, hoping to get a start. Can you imagine how many times that she was told no? But she kept going. She kept pursuing. She kept pursuing something that was larger than herself. And ultimately, she's going down as one of the greatest musical talents across any genre of all time. And that's because she didn't quit, and that's because she never said no. And she ultimately worked so hard at something that she was so passionate about. And there are a lot of life lessons that I take away from Dolly Parton's life. Why I started this show, because I'm passionate about college football. And, starting this thing from scratch, started this thing at 0 subscribers, had 0 subscribers over a month ago, and trying to build this thing as slowly or hopefully as quickly as possible, but it takes time. And having, an example like Dolly Parton, who was able to use her platform to help others, to help those who are less fortunate, it's incredible. And I know that because she grew up poor and she talked about her dad being illiterate and that sort of thing, one of her biggest life missions was to help those in the state of Tennessee, help children be able to read. And she provides kids, from birth up until they're 5 years old, every month provides them a free book. My mother read those books to me when I was a kid. So seeing the news of this death really shook me to my core. There will never be another Dolly Parton. She's a legend. And I just wanted to start out the show today by sending my thoughts and prayers to those affected, to her family. I know a lot of people are really shaken up by this news, myself included, but there will never be another Dolly Parton. And we certainly wanted to honor her on the first part of our show. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough, but we have some more things to talk about as well. But I definitely wanted to pay my respects to a one-of-one Tennessee legend, the greatest Tennessean of all time, Dolly Parton. In other Tennessee news, Vanderbilt made shocking headlines today. Earlier, Pete Thamel for ESPN broke the news that Vandy was naming a starting quarterback in Blaze Berlowitz. A lot of people, myself included, on the show yesterday, I kind of took a victory lap. If I'm being honest, I took a victory lap because I was right about Keelan Russell being named the starter at Alabama because I ultimately thought that he was the best option. I thought that Faison Brandon was going to be the starter at Tennessee, and Josh Heupel named him the starter yesterday. I thought that Aaron Philo at Florida was going to end up being their starter. He was named the starter by John Sumrall yesterday. And then I was just completely wrong on this. I whiffed so bad on this. Was completely caught off guard by the news that Blaze Berlowitz was going to be the starter for Vanderbilt. I talked to Joey Dwyer, who does a great job covering Vanderbilt football for Vandy on SI, and talked to him a few weeks ago, and they had scrimmages, and I talked to various people who had been out there, and from what they said, it sounded like Jared Curtis had the edge from a physical perspective. I think that he was ready to play in the SEC yesterday, but what I had talked about on this show specifically was, what does that mental curve look like? How quickly can he get the offense down? How quickly does what he's seeing across the field from him start to slow down? The level that he played at in high school, coming from Division II single A classification in Middle Tennessee, which I also played at that level at high school, so I can feel like I can relate a little bit. There is going to be a big jump for him. There is. But he's super very talented, and just because Blaze Berlowitz was named the starter at Vanderbilt doesn't mean that Blaze is going to be the starter the whole season. But I was shocked by this. Now, I'm going to start with this from the Blaze Berlowitz perspective. This is a guy that started his career at New Mexico in 2023. It was Diego Pavia's backup. He followed Diego Pavia. He followed offensive coordinator Tim Beck over to Vanderbilt. Also followed Jerry Kill, who was an offensive advisor for Vanderbilt, one of the more underrated coaches in the country. He's had 4 years, or he's entering year 4 of being in the same system. He didn't have to learn a new offense coming over from New Mexico to Vanderbilt. He may not have experience or a ton of experience. He's gotten in some games before, but he knows this offense. So if anything, he can be a bridge quarterback to Jared Curtis, because we all know why Jared Curtis was brought in. We all know why Jared Curtis is getting paid all that money by Vanderbilt, because he is the future in waiting. He's waiting in the wings. But it doesn't hurt to have a guy like Blaze Berlowitz, who, again, he's entering year 4 in the same system. He has adequate enough traits to serve as that stopgap quarterback or that bridge type quarterback until Jared Curtis is ready to go. What does this look like from Blaze Berlowitz's perspective? Does he kind of, take this thing, and I believe that this might be Blaze Berlowitz's last season. Does he take this and try to make the most of it and just run wild with it and end up starting the whole year and having a pretty good year for Vanderbilt? Or is it one of those things where you see the guy who's sitting behind you and then you start to do things to lose the starting quarterback title? Those are two different avenues that Blaze Berlowitz could potentially go down, but two things that come to mind for me. Now for Jared Curtis, we know the talent of this kid. 5-star, highest rated recruit in Vanderbilt history, was originally committed to Georgia twice, flirted with the idea of going to Oregon. So we know the talent that this kid has, and I've seen him up close and personal. He still will get some playing time. Vanderbilt opens the season with Austin Peay. They have Delaware in week 2, and then things start to ramp up with the way that the SEC, the scheduling dynamic. You still have the 9 SEC conference games, but then you also have that 10th game against a Power 4 opponent, in which case for Vanderbilt, that takes place in week 3 when they host NC State. But there is a ramp-up process because you have Austin Peay, you have Delaware, and then you have NC State. For Jared Curtis, if what Clark Lee is telling us about him is true, that they don't think that he's ready yet, but he's still going to play against Austin Peay and Delaware, that's good, because it doesn't really matter who's starting at quarterback for Vanderbilt. You should beat both of those teams. And if Vanderbilt's up by, let's say, 4 touchdowns when Jared Curtis comes into the game, he's going to get valuable experience just to get acclimated to the college field, to the college game. What happens, because I don't think Blaze Berlowitz is going to lose the starting quarterback title against Austin Peay and Delaware. I think it doesn't take much to look good against those teams, no offense to Austin Peay and Delaware. But what if Jared Curtis just looks infinitely better than Blaze Berlowitz? Does he end up starting by week 3? That's something that I'm asking myself. That's just kind of something that's come to my mind, because I find it hard to believe that Blaze Berlowitz is going to be the starter the whole season for Vanderbilt. And a lot of people who cover Vanderbilt and some fans of Vanderbilt in general were not only taken off guard by this, but some of them don't like this, that Jared Curtis is not starting. And I thought about, how much Jared Curtis is getting paid at NIL. The reported number is $2 million. There were boosters that paid a lot of money to get him to Vanderbilt. Where's their head at right now? That's something that I've also been thinking about. So that was obviously the latest big-time QB battle that was going on in the SEC. It was only a matter of time, because we saw Keelan Russell get announced as the starter at Alabama, Faison Brandon get announced as the starter at Tennessee, Aaron Philo at Florida, and now Blaze Berlowitz at Vanderbilt. Moving along with the show, we have actual games to talk about. Now, I've explained it, and I'll explain again for those that might be new to the show. I don't believe that week 0 is the official kickoff to the college football season, because the rest of the country collectively, the entire country, is not kicking off on the same weekend. That is week 1. I believe week 1 is the official kickoff to the college football season. Week 0, you have 9 games, which is more games than we've had in previous years. And next year, we know that things will look a whole lot different in terms of scheduling. But I consider week 0 the appetizer, with week 1 and beyond being the main course. The appetizer is not the official kickoff to the meal, in my mind. But nonetheless, these games will count. You lose, it counts in your win-loss record. You win, it also counts. So these aren't real games, and we have 9 of them. Now, I don't usually make a habit of talking about these teams, not because I have a problem with any of these teams, but if I were to talk about Sacramento State, how many of you guys would tune out if we're just being honest? So, but they do play this weekend. They're making their college football FBS appearance for the first time. So we'll just give a quick preview and tell you what some lines are. So I'm going to start off with, and I've strategically planned out, I'm going to talk about the big games at the tail end because when we do college football previews, I like to talk about the biggest games at the end and start off with some of the games, lighter slate. I like to start with them at the beginning. So we'll talk about San Jose State and USC. So USC, big time favorite, the 14th ranked team in the country according to the preseason poll. They are a 38.5-point favorite. This game will kick off at 2 p.m. on NBC. Mainly going to talk about this from a USC perspective. Jayden Maiava, year 3. We know the expectations. We know that Lincoln Riley has never really had an issue developing quarterbacks. Year 3 in the system, you should be one of the top tier quarterbacks in college football. And a lot of people have Jayden Maiava in the early Heisman discussions. So what does he look like? You expect him to look good. I love the run game with Wayman Jordan and King Miller. I've been really high on that. 2 guys that started as walk-ons and are now entering their second season, getting a large role in the offense. But the thing that I've been most excited about to see with USC is the line of scrimmage. Because for the first time under Lincoln Riley, for the first time since USC has joined the Big Ten, the reports are that USC finally has your traditional Big Ten line of scrimmage, not just on the offensive side of the ball, but the defensive side of the ball as well. So that you obviously won't have the best gauge considering their opponent is San Jose State, but I'm still excited to see what that looks like. And I'm excited to see what the defense looks like under Gary Patterson. How many rungs up the ladder has that defense climbed? Because Lincoln Riley, we're just calling things spade a spade, made some mistakes hiring on the defensive side of the ball when he first got to USC. I think he's since then fixed those hires. He's had ample time to do so. What does that look like? So USC, they're going to win easily against San Jose State. That game is 2 p.m. on NBC. Moving on with our slate here, Jacksonville State at North Dakota State. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this game. North Dakota State is making their FBS appearance, their first game as a member of the Mountain West Conference. They are a 7-point favorite. That's 4:30 p.m. on CBS Sports Network. One of the places that I've always wanted to visit in college football is the Fargo Dome. I just haven't had the excuse to go. But the Fargo Dome to me, I know College Game Days made appearances out there to Fargo, North Dakota. I've always been fascinated by North Dakota State, always wanted to go to the Fargo Dome. Maybe somebody's listening right now that can hook me up with an opportunity to go out there. Jacksonville State, I don't expect them to be very good this year. Just the way things are right now with the transfer portal, and if you have success as a group of 6, naturally the next year you get rated by the transfer portal. I don't think Jacksonville State's going to be very good. I could be wrong, but I'm leaning North Dakota State in this one. How about Sacramento State and Eastern Michigan, a MAC game in week 0? MAC rivals? You have a team from California traveling to Michigan for a conference game. What a world we live in 2026. But yeah, I'm excited to see this one. Eastern Michigan, a pretty big favorite, and if I were a betting man, which I'm not, I've never spent a dime of my money betting. But there are some of you out there listening who are, and that's okay. But Eastern Michigan's a pretty big favorite, 10 points. I honestly, if I were a betting man, I might take the over on Eastern Michigan here. Because Sacramento State, they fought and they clawed their way to finally getting status of being an FBS program, there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment period climbing up from the FCS to FBS. The success for them may not be instant, but Eastern Michigan has been around for a while in the MAC. I expect them to win by more than 10. The over-under is set at 52.5. 5:30 p.m. on ESPN Plus. If you're a sicko like me, you'll probably be watching this game. So I'm leaning Eastern Michigan. And that one, this game was played last year and is actually a really good game. I remember this game was played out in Hawaii. Hawaii and Stanford. Stanford is a 4-point favorite. Now, out of all the lines of games that I was looking at, this one intrigued me the most because I know the games at Stanford, and I know technically Stanford is a Power 4 school, but I kind of like Hawaii. That's where my gut is telling me to go on this. That's where my heart is telling me to go. It's going to be rough for Stanford. I think they were picked to finish either second or third to last in the ACC, and there are like 21 teams in that conference now. But something is telling me that Hawaii is going to win this football game. So something to keep an eye on. That's going to be 6 p.m. on ACC Network. Last time that game was played last year in Week 0, I believe it was like a 9:30 p.m. kickoff. Really late game, but a really fun game. Florida State, they host New Mexico State at 6 p.m. on the CW Network. Not going to spend a lot of time on this because we all know the fate of Florida State, or at least we think we know. Mike Norvell is on the hot seat. Florida State, I just can't pencil in a lot of wins for them, just looking at their schedule. But this is one of the games that they should win. Florida State is a 30.5-point favorite. Seems fair. Think they're going to beat New Mexico. So we got through 5 games, and we're going to get into some of my favorite games now. North Carolina and TCU in Dublin. This is the first game of the day, 11 p.m. on ESPN. This game was played last year, and we all know how that went. UNC got splattered in Chapel Hill on primetime Monday night. North Carolina scored the first touchdown, but outside of that, TCU ran away with them. This is going to be our first opportunity to see 2 new quarterbacks. For North Carolina, they have Billy Edwards, who they announced as their starter about a week ago. Previously, he was at Wisconsin, and before that, he was at Maryland. Solid quarterback, but I just don't have a lot of hope for North Carolina this year. I have a lot more hope for TCU. TCU is a 7.5-point favorite. First time that we'll get to see a new quarterback for them, because remember, their quarterback from last year, Josh Hoover, he is now at Indiana. Jaden Craig, a transfer from Harvard, who set multiple school records, set some Ivy League records as well. Really good quarterback, was really coveted in the transfer portal. This will be our first opportunity to see him. I actually think that TCU might be a similar result to last year. I like TCU minus 7.5. I do not have any confidence really in North Carolina this season. I think the writing on the wall is for Bill Belichick and the 33rd NFL team. NC State at Virginia. This game was originally supposed to be played in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. Thank goodness that some common sense finally kicked in, and this game was moved to an on-campus. It was moved to a on-campus environment. They will be playing this game in Charlottesville, Virginia. ACC game, Week 0, NC State, Virginia. Virginia coming off of a pretty magical run last year. Winning 11 games, if you include the bowl game. Made it to the ACC championship game. No Chandler Morris at quarterback. It's going to be Bo Pribula, who transferred from Missouri. And by the way, there was a really good article on ESPN released earlier this week talking about Bo Pribula. And when he entered the transfer portal from Missouri, traveled over 6,000 miles to visit 8 schools before deciding on Virginia. So really excited to see Bo Pribula for Virginia. And then on the flip side for NC State, I've mentioned on the show before when we previewed the ACC and we talked about ACC record predictions. When NC State is not getting talked about, that's when they're at their most dangerous. That's not me saying NC State's going to the playoff or anything, but I could see 8-4 in the cards for NC State for Dave Doran and co. But NC State has a really underrated quarterback. And when I talked about underrated quarterbacks, and there's a graphic up on the YouTube channel if you want to go check it out later, of my top 10 underrated quarterbacks in the country, and CJ Bailey was on this list. Now, he's a thin guy, but he has legit NFL arm talent. So if you're looking at quarterback play in week 0, my eyes would go to Virginia and NC State because you get Bo Pribula versus CJ Bailey. That should definitely be really exciting. And then the game that I'm most excited about in week 0, Memphis at UNLV. I believe this is going to be the best game of the day. I believe you're looking at 2 legitimate playoff contenders because remember, the group of 6 gets a bid. Memphis will certainly have a case, I believe. UNLV will certainly have a case as well. And remember, too, UNLV didn't make the move to the new Pac-12 or the Pac-8, wherever you want to call it. So they don't have to deal with Boise State anymore. So that's a plus in the direction of UNLV. And Memphis, when I'm thinking about best conferences in the group of 6, American always comes to mind. And Memphis has been steady good for the last few years. They get Charles Huff, who came over from Southern Miss, really good coach, brought a lot of his players with him. But this game is in Las Vegas, year 2 for Dan Mullen. Jackson Arnold is actually going to be the starter at quarterback for UNLV. How does he look at the group of 6 level? This is a 9 p.m. kickoff on Fox, but I'm telling you, I believe this is going to be the best game of week 0. And it's going to be really fun between 2 teams that are hoping to get that group of 6 bid and ultimately get to the college football playoff. I said there were 9 games, and I think underneath the graphic it says 9 games. There are actually 8 games in week 0, but still, nonetheless, actual games that we get to talk about. We'll go through a little bit of a final news and notes on Thursday's show before we actually get to the weekend. But would you believe that we get actual college football games to talk about? And I'm so excited. Remember, appetizer to the main course, not the main course, but still games that count nonetheless. Okay. I would like to applaud the Big Ten for what they did. Because today they issued a statement from league offices that the Big Ten was proposing a ban of professional athletes returning to their conference, returning to play college athletics as a member of the Big Ten Conference. I applaud them for this. The Big Ten has not always been the best about messaging and marketing when it comes to the general public. And I have an example. I'll give you an example. With the college football playoff, the Big Ten has been out in front of this saying that they've wanted 24 teams. Tony Petitti wants 24 teams. They haven't budged on this stance. That's what they want. And a lot of people, myself included, are so against this 2014 playoff that it's not even funny, and rightfully so. I could talk about that maybe another show. But I would respect the Big Ten a lot more if they just came out and said, hey, a 24-team college football playoff would ultimately bring us more revenue, would guarantee job security for a lot of these coaches. If they just came out and told us the truth, I'd have a lot more respect for that. I still don't like the reasoning, and I think it's pretty bad logic overall, but at least they're telling the truth. With this, they're trying to gaslight the general college football public into thinking that we should all be on board for this 2014 college football playoff. No. Don't let anybody gaslight you into believing that a 24-team college football playoff would be good for the sport, because it's not. So I digress. That's just an example of poor messaging when it comes to the conference as a whole. But they issued this statement yesterday about a ban. They proposed a ban on professional athletes returning to college, and it passed with a unanimous vote among Big Ten athletic directors, coaches, that sort of thing. And then the SEC had a chance to respond. And the SEC put out a statement last night, and I'll get it pulled up here, and I agreed with it. I'll read you this statement. So this was last night from the SEC. After a Monday evening video conference of the presidents and chancellors of the Southeastern Conference, the conference is issuing a following statement. College athletes, not former professional athletes, have been at the heart of the Southeastern Conference. Individuals who choose to leave college athletics, sign professional playing contracts, and compete professionally should not then be permitted to return to college competition. Allowing that to occur will blur the line between college and professional sports, create significant competitive equity concerns, and reduce opportunities for high school and current college athletes. College sports are for college athletes. The current confusion around the national eligibility standards emphasize the needs to protect college sports. So that statement was put out yesterday, and my response was, okay, now what? You can put that out, but are you going to take any action? And they did. Before we got on the air here, during the 6 o'clock hour or 7 p.m. hour, whatever time zone you're in, an hour ago, the SEC released a statement that they were also following suit with the Big Ten, banning professional athletes from coming back to college. This received unanimous support among athletic directors and head coaches within the conference. It's ultimately the right decision for the SEC to do this, but it should have been done yesterday. Instead of putting out that statement, you should have just issued the ban right then and there. And if I want to take it a step further, you should have issued a ban in March when Charles Bediako stepped out onto the court for Alabama after playing a couple seasons in the NBA G League. That's when the SEC should have come out and did something. It's late. It's ultimately the right decision. I guess better late than never, but this should have been done a while ago. And I wasn't sure if the SEC was actually going to issue this ban, considering that the Big Ten ultimately did it first. And knowing the SEC and knowing Greg Sankey like I think I know them, they don't strike me as those that want to be seen as followers, but leaders. My response would be, if that was the case, well, you had the opportunity to lead when Charles Bediako stepped out on the court for Alabama men's basketball. But ultimately, this is the right decision. I'm happy that they came to this conclusion because we can all agree that it was ridiculous in the first place, that this was even being considered, and that this was even considered to be a realistic possibility. It was crazy. It was mind-blowing. It was mind-boggling, whatever word you want to use. So I'm happy that we have ultimately come to this consensus. And this leads me to the next thing, and that was Lane Kiffin. He made an appearance on the Pat McAfee show today, and I went back and I listened to what he had to say. And he said pretty much everything that I expected him to say. He doubled down on, well, if it was passed in state court, you can't be in favor of one injunction but not another. You got to play by the rules. That's where, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm summarizing. And he made this point, which I actually think he was right about. And I'm paraphrasing once again. Basically, he said whatever team got a player from the NFL waiver wire or it got them to commit to his school, that school would be the poster child. And he's 100% right about that. And it happened to be LSU. But then again, this is just how my mind works. Doesn't it make sense that Lane Kiffin would be the poster child on an issue this big in college athletics? That just makes sense. Because Lane Kiffin, I don't expect him to have the type of integrity that a coach like Dan Lanning displayed, saying like, hey, if you're a professional athlete, you're a professional athlete. You're not coming back to college. I don't expect that from Lane Kiffin. And honestly, I'm not caught off guard by anything that surrounds Lane Kiffin or headlines that Lane Kiffin makes just because I know that it's Lane Kiffin and I know what comes with the territory. So he said everything that I thought that he would say on the Pat McAfee show. In the same breath, I know that coaches like Lane Kiffin are going to be in favor of something like this because it could help their team and it can help their team win football games. And nowadays, more than ever, when coaches are on the hot seat, coaches are getting fired left and right at such a rapid pace. They're doing whatever they can to help their team win football games. And every team is competing for every last inch that might give them an advantage in a football game. I'm going to go back to what I said yesterday. I love the coaches in college football, but I don't care what their opinion is on this. And it shouldn't be up to them. It should be, in theory, up to the NCAA, but they've shown that they can't get their head out of their butts long enough to enforce their rules. They tried going to Congress so they could get congressional intervention to be able to pass this Protect College Sports Act so that they can enforce their rules. And the record against the local courts is just abysmal. Pretty much over at this point. So it goes back to there's no leadership in college football. A lot of people who have their hands on the wheel are people who shouldn't have their hands on the wheel, people that don't have the best interest of the sport at heart. And I heard this discussion today earlier on Get Up on ESPN. And they were talking about college sports basically being considered professional sports because athletes are getting paid millions of dollars to compete in the current landscape. And therefore, that makes them professional. I could get into that another time, but I get the sentiment. What do other professional sports have that college sports doesn't? The answer is a commissioner. The NFL has a commissioner. If you wanted to go to talk to Roger Goodell, you could fly up to New York. You can knock on the league offices. You can knock on the building and theoretically talk to a commissioner. The same thing applies with, let's say, the NBA. You could go talk to Adam Silver. You could go talk to Rob Manfred at the MLB. They have, actual commissioners, guys that when something happens in the sport, that's the person that you have to answer to, the commissioner. College football doesn't have that. College athletics doesn't have that in general. For a long time, it was the NCAA who enforced rules. They have since then lost all their power, lost the teeth to enforce rules. So a lot of people it's almost like a power struggle at the top of college football. A lot of local courts overruling the NCAA. You have the College Sports Commission in there. Just a lot of different directions. There is a need for a college football commissioner. The problem is, I don't know anybody that wants the job because it's such a chaotic mess under the hood of the car that it's a lot for one person. And, people have brought up Nick Saban as being the potential commissioner of college football. He's already been on record saying that he doesn't want that. And with all that's going on behind the scenes in the sport, I understand. But that doesn't change the fact that college football needs a commissioner, needs somebody who loves the sport, needs somebody who has the best interest of the sport at heart, and ultimately knows what they're doing. So, again, I'm going to go back to where I started. I applaud the Big Ten. I applaud the SEC. I expect the ACC to follow suit. I expect the Big 12 to follow suit. Notre Dame's on board with the SEC and Big Ten. It's just ridiculous that this was even a thought in the first place. We continue our fall camp intel series. It's a series that we've been doing throughout the month of August where we'll talk about a team from anywhere in the country, and we'll give some fall camp intel. So tonight, that leads us to Lubbock, Texas, and the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Let's start at the very top. We all know the Brendan Sorsby situation, how that went down. Their starting quarterback is going to be a guy by the name of Will Hammond. Will Hammond was there last year, actually came in for a couple games when Baron Morton went down with injury. Will Hammond actually played pretty good. This is the guy that they have confidence in. This is a guy that Joey McGuire has confidence in, that the team has confidence in, and frankly, I do too. I think the ceiling for Texas Tech is about as high as it was last year. I'm a fan overall of the roster. You look at the run game, Cameron Dickey and Jacoby Williams, two guys that rushed for a combined just under 2,000 yards last year and 20 touchdowns. They add Quentin Joyner back to the stable of running backs who missed all of last season with an injury. It was a transfer from USC, was projected to be their starter at running back last year, but he went down in the preseason with an injury, and they ended up having to rely on these guys like Cameron Dickey, like Jacoby Williams. These are all Big 12 caliber players, and that running back room just gets stronger. They have 3 starters returning on the offensive line at the most valuable positions at left tackle, the guy that will be protecting Will Hammond's blind side. You return your right tackle and your center. To me, no offense to the left guard, right guard, you need all 5 positions on the offensive line, certainly. But if I were to pick the 3 most important positions on the offensive line, left tackle, center, right tackle, you have returners at those spots and can kind of catch whoever the left guard and right guard ends up being up to speed. So I trust the Texas Tech offensive line. They have a tight end by the name of Terrence Carter, who is a preseason All-American, one of the best, if not the best, returning tight end in college football. Certainly a case to be made for Trey'Dez Green at LSU and Jamari Johnson at Oregon. But Terrence Carter is up there with the very best of them. The defense continues to scale. Defense was really, really good last year. I've gotten into arguments and conversations with people about Texas Tech, about their defense, and they come at me with, well, on the defense, they lost Jacob Rodriguez. Yes, and they may not have a Jacob Rodriguez type player this year, but they returned some people in that front 7. Ben Roberts, who really came on the scene that Big 12 championship game versus BYU, he's back. He's a really good player, another preseason all Big 12 type player. Their starting defense, their projected starters on defense, let me just read this off to you. 9 seniors, 1 junior, and 1 sophomore. So out of the 11, 10 of those are upperclassmen. So there's experience there. I really look at this overall roster, and I believe that it upgraded compared to where it was last year. The only thing that I think they didn't upgrade in the spot was at quarterback. But, again, that was just an unfortunate situation that apparently they didn't see coming. A guy that I've been hearing a little bit of buzz about is a true freshman edge rusher by the name of LaDainian Guyton. The high motor on this kid, his ceiling, according to the coaching staff, is extremely high. Already getting comparisons to David Bailey and Romello Height, 2 guys that were drafted last year in the NFL draft. David Bailey, the 2nd overall pick to the New York Jets. Romello Height, a 3rd-round pick to the San Francisco 49ers. Now, LaDainian Guyton may not be a starter for Texas Tech, but he's certainly going to be in the rotation. On top of that, Texas Tech has the 5th-ranked transfer portal class coming in. They have the 20th-ranked high school recruiting class. And if you look at their 2026 schedule, and I have it pulled up here in front of me, let me just read this to you. Abilene Christian, Oregon State, Houston, Sam Houston, Colorado, Arizona State, at Cincinnati, Arizona, West Virginia, at Oklahoma State, at Baylor, TCU. In theory, I projected Texas Tech to go 11-1. The toughest game that I have circled on their schedule is that Houston game in week 3. That is going to be Houston's my dark horse team in the Big 12. I think they're going to be a really good team this year. They're a preseason top 20 team. And Texas Tech, if that's their toughest game, at least it's at home. So I did make room for one slip-up spot. You can make the case that Texas Tech could go 12-0 in the regular season, but that Houston game is going to be pretty tough. The Arizona State game, that might be tough too. That's on October 17th, but that's at home. The Arizona game, I don't know how good Arizona is going to be this year outside of Noah Fafita, but that game is also at home on Halloween. You have to go to Stillwater, Oklahoma State. You have to go to Baylor, and then that TCU game to end the season. Texas Tech, I fully expect to be 11-1, 12-0, competing for a Big 12 championship game. May even win the Big 12, which I predicted they would. And if they win the Big 12, that means they get in the college football playoff. So I expect really good things from Texas Tech this year, and I'm really high on that roster, even higher than I was on it last year. And they had a really good team last year. The thing that I wanted to end the show on, we started the show with Tennessee. We're going to end the show in the state of Tennessee. Arian Carter, linebacker for the Vols, senior, out of Smyrna, was suspended for 3 games for he declared for the NFL draft, or at least made the announcement that he was going to enter the NFL draft. He hired an agent, like most people do. The agent paid for a flight for Arian Carter to go out to a training facility. This was in the month of January, a $427 flight. And later on, I guess Arian Carter didn't get good feedback about where he might go in the NFL draft because he was playing with an injury last season, his junior year at Tennessee. So that might have scared off a couple of NFL teams. So he decided that he was going to return for his senior season to play for the Vols. He paid back the $427 flight to his agent, and the NCAA found out about it. Originally wanted to suspend him 3 games, but they reduced it a first time, reduced it to 2 games, and of course that got a lot of national pushback, myself included, who thought it was just absolutely ridiculous, pure stupidity by the NCAA, because if the biggest fish to fry they have is over a $427 flight that was paid back, by the way, what in the world are we doing? What in the world are we doing? You don't think that this might be going on in other places? Hey, you should probably worry about banning professional athletes from coming back to college before you worry about a $427 flight. How about that? So the NCAA came out today and said that they were going to reduce the suspension again, this time to a 1-game suspension. My rebuttal was, so the NCAA had 2 separate opportunities to reduce this guy's suspension, and yet Arian Carter still has to miss time. It's stupid. He paid back the money. He, at the time, was going to declare for the NFL draft. And then he made the decision that he wanted to come back to college. So from that perspective, what did he do? What did he do wrong? You've got bigger things to worry about if you're the NCAA. Like, I don't know, staying an organization, because we all know that the NCAA is one of the biggest villains in college football. Nobody really likes you as an organization. So maybe you should just focus on staying afloat as an organization and not losing in local court. Had 2 opportunities to reduce this thing, and instead reduced this thing to 1, and he still has to miss time. If you're looking on the positive, Arian Carter would have had to miss the Furman game, which Tennessee can win the Furman game with or without Arian Carter. But week 2, they would have traveled to Atlanta to take on Georgia Tech, a very run-heavy team under Brent Key, in which you would have had to rely a lot upon that front 7. And defensive line depth at Tennessee is not as deep as it has been in previous years. But a positional strength they had was that linebacking room. So obviously you don't want to lose a guy like Arian Carter, but if you were to lose anybody at that position, linebacker is the position that Tennessee could afford to lose some guys. But still, you want to have your best players out there. Arian Carter's a starter. You want to have your best players out there if you're going to take on a really run-heavy team. Especially, you want as many linebackers out there as possible. So you're looking on the bright side. Arian Carter gets to play against Georgia Tech, which is a huge plus in the category of Tennessee. The negative, he still has to miss a game. Again, it's against Furman, and Tennessee can win with or without him, but I think we can all agree that this is stupid that the NCAA had a couple of opportunities to reduce this suspension, and he's still not suspended for 0 games. So it's crazy. And that is tonight's show. Thank you for watching, all that watched live. If you haven't, please make sure that you're subscribed. We talk college football year round. That's all we do. If you think that you're subscribed, not 100% sure, just go ahead and double check. And if you are, get 5 of your closest friends to subscribe to. Again, it's college football year round. We've upped this thing to 3 shows a week. Next show will be on Thursday. We had a show yesterday in case you want to go back in the podcast feed or on the YouTube and go check it out. Having a lot of fun. Have actual games to talk about. Did a full week 0 preview. Going to touch on some final news and notes heading into the weekend on Thursday. I'm just so excited that we're back. It's glorious. It's so glorious. I feel every sad bone in my body leaving now that we have college football back. But remember, not the main course, not the official kickoff to the season, but the appetizer to the main course. Get to scratch that itch. Thank you, everybody that's watched. We'll be back again on Thursday. In the meantime, take care. God bless, and we'll talk again in a couple days.